Hello everyone, and welcome back to another great super cool radio interview. I'm your host as always, Matthew Thomas. Thank you so much for tuning in. And before we dive into this video, just a quick reminder to thumbs up this video and subscribe to our channel and turn on that notification bell. That way you do not miss any super cool content. I got a really great guest joining me for this interview. He is best known as the singing drummer for Montreal pop punk band the Doughboys. Very recently, he released a new single entitled Anemic Heart. He is Brock Pytel. In this interview, we discuss the unique backstory of Anemic Heart, punk music, Iggy Pop, and so much more. It is a really great conversation, and I hope you enjoy. So let's dive into this interview. Before we jump into the show, I want to tell you about our merch store on Threadless. Shop a wide variety of logos with multiple colors and sizes available for each design. Your support is greatly appreciated and helps us continue to make killer content like this episode. Please visit supercoolradio.threadless.com or the link in the description to shop now. Thank you so much for hanging out with me.
Yeah, great pleasure, always.
So before really, I know we got a lot to discuss with the new single, the two new singles you've released so far. But before we get to that, I got a fun question for you. What is one album you recommend everyone check out in their lifetime?
Oh, God. Zen Arcade by Husker Du. If you haven't heard of Zen Arcade by Husker Du, it's a Minneapolis band from the 80s. Maybe you've heard of Bob Mould. That was his first main band. And Zen Arcade was kind of like sort of influential because it came out of that hardcore punk rock era, but it really did something to that genre that hadn't really been done before. So if you haven't heard that record, it's a double record. I recommend you check that out. It's pretty intense. They were like, crystal meth on the coffee pot before they recorded. So it's pretty high-paced, frenetic, and intense.
Oh, right on. I'm not familiar. I have to check them out because love punk music, so I'm definitely gonna give that album a listen.
Yeah, if you're into that, it's definitely worth checking out. The whole that was a big part of the Minneapolis thrust in the late '80s. Replacements. That would be the next record. If we went for another record, we'd probably pick a Replacements record.
I have heard of them. Heard of them. They're really cool. Minneapolis, kind of low key, produced a lot of great bands of that genre.
Yeah, at that time, that was one of the big cities, and then after that, I think it shifted to kind of like Athens, Georgia, for a bit, and REM came out, and then after that, it sort of was. I think it was like Halifax, Nova Scotia. There was a bunch of East Coast Canadian bands. So, yeah, Minneapolis definitely had its heyday for sure.
Oh, definitely, for sure. Now, I do want to talk about. So, obviously, as I mentioned in the intro, you have a new single that was recently released entitled "Anemic Heart." Now, this story's got a little bit of a unique backstory. This is some music you recorded over a decade ago.
Yeah, that's right. At the time, I just done this couple of dates with the Doughboys. We kind of got back together for a few shows. There was 2 shows with Foo Fighters and 2 shows. We did a couple of shows in smaller venues just for the fans that didn't want to pay big money for the arena shows, right? So, so I was in Montreal around that time and just had some songs kicking around and some ideas, and just Howard Bylerman has that studio there, Hotel to Tango, which is a really great creative spot, and Howard's super supportive guy. So we were working, and he just kind of gave me the keys one night and said, okay, well, we've done this one. And so the first day we did Hurrah, Hooray, that's the single that came out 6 months ago. And he was like, okay, well, he handed me the keys to the studio and said, well, we need something else for tomorrow. So get to work, write something else. So it was myself and a couple of my Doughboys buddies who were also in Montreal, and we just did that. At the time, it sort of was like, okay, well, let's put this out. But I came back to Vancouver and ended up working with some other players, and the songs just kind of sort of sat there for a bit.
Yeah, for sure. And how'd you determine like now is like that you want to release the music?
Well, I kind of always figured I would be doing them with my current band, and we did sort of play them live for a bit. But as we wrote newer stuff, which I mean, we can talk about that a bit later. We have an EP that's about ready to come out. These songs sort of found their way out of the set just in favor of songs we were writing with that particular lineup. And you know, everyone had a really shitty time with COVID and all that, and I had a shitty time as well. Found out I had cancer at a certain point, and so that kind of really motivated me to. I was kind of looking at my track record, and I'm like, well, I love music more than anything. Making music is what I figure I'm here for, you know. But I was looking at the, you know, recorded output of what I've done since the Doughboys, and you know, I had the one solo record in the early 2000s, but it just felt like for what I have to say and for how much I love to make music, there just wasn't enough out there. And if I'd like died tomorrow, I wouldn't be happy with what's there. So I figured I better, you know, get at it. So I was like, okay, well, these songs are there. Might as well just, you know, it's kind of like when you have stuff kind of accumulated and it's not, you know, the process of songs is like if people don't hear it and it doesn't get released, it's not finished for me. It's not like the complete cycle, right? So getting it out and getting it released kind of clears the plate and allows for more to come, you know. So really just kind of try to jumpstart the process a bit.
Well, for sure. There's definitely a process with, you know, creating music. You know, you create the music, but then to hear the feedback and to hear what people think of the music, it's definitely a cycle. And sometimes it only gets partially through where it doesn't get released and then it doesn't finish the process.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes that's okay. That's part of the creative process too. Sometimes an idea maybe isn't strong enough to reach that far, and it just kind of sits around for a while, and then you throw it back in the compost pile, and it churns and comes into something else, maybe later or maybe not, you know. But when there's an idea that's strong enough, you know, you gotta kind of do your due diligence to kind of help it have a life, and sort of seems like that's been the case with this so far, at least based on the response of the first day. You know, people seem to be glad that I'm releasing it, so that's a good thing.
Well, for sure. I've had the opportunity to listen to Anemic Heart as well. I really enjoy it because it's a little bit different from some of the music I typically listen to, and I mean that in a good way. That, you know, expanding horizons with music, but it's unique, especially like for me as a listener who normally doesn't listen to that style of music. I really enjoy it.
Oh, cool. Well, I appreciate that. I mean, that's what it's all about, right? People reaching out, making connections, music, making you think differently. I mean, there's so much good music right now. It's amazing how much good music there is coming out. I can hardly keep up with all this stuff, all the playlists I'm making. Every time I hear something, I make a playlist to listen to it and then check it out in my car or whatever. It's a really, really great time. So yeah, I'm stoked.
Oh, definitely. Now, like for the process of, you know, releasing Anemic Heart, did you have to really, you know, change anything in like the original recording? Do you have to re-record anything, or is this how it was recorded back in 2019?
This one was mostly how it was recorded. Now, at the time, we really didn't mix much. Howard, the producer guy, Howard Bylerman, you probably know him. He did Godspeed You Black Emperor, and there's another famous Montreal band I can't think of that he did. You would know of. Yeah, it's blinking my mind at the moment. Anyway, he mixed the one song, and then the other stuff was his tracks. I kind of came home with a bunch of stuff unfinished. Hurrah, Hooray was one of those. I had like a scratch vocal, and then went through this breakup and sort of got motivated to start singing that one again because it's kind of an angry song. So I recorded those vocals here at Capsule in Vancouver, so Vancouver, BC, Canada, with Aurora Jane, who's a local producer. And we did those vocals there, and after that, I was just on Facebook one day, and my friend Jay Robbins made a post saying he was supposed to be recording the new Moving Targets record. And this was just like maybe 8 months ago, I want to say. And someone in the band Moving Targets had fallen ill with COVID, so he had a cancellation. He had a bunch of time at Magpie Studios where he had nothing booked. And it was like, hey, anybody want to mix anything or track something? And I messaged him like, yeah, I got some stuff to mix, Jay. So I sent him the song. This is Jay Robbins' Jawbox, Government Issue, Burning Airlines. He's going out doing a solo thing with, sorry, name's blanking here. Soulside, another DC band, another old DC band. So they're doing some East Coast dates in March coming up. So yeah, he was free. He mixed it and sent that back to me. Then I got my friend Chris to master it, and that was that. So that was Hurrah, Hooray. The new one, Anemic Heart, was mostly already mixed. So it was just a question of getting it mastered, getting some artwork done, making sure it sounded sort of like it came from the same session as Hurrah, Hooray, right? I wanted to make sure. That's kind of why the two covers are the same, just different colors. So I wanted to, even though they're coming out at separate times, for them to, you know, be associated from the same session.
No, I totally gotcha. And, you know, both, you know, again, I've had the opportunity to listen to both. I really enjoy it, and it does have like the similar vibes to both songs, obviously, because, you know, written and recorded around the same time, but you keep that same vibe for both those songs as well.
Yeah, cool. Does that sound to you like it came out on the same record?
I would say so, yeah. It's got
cool.
Similar styles to both. I mean, you know, Hello Hooray, a little bit more aggressive with it compared to like Anemic Heart, but I would say yes.
Yeah. I was hoping that sonically they could at least be sort of in the same ballpark. And I talked to Chris about that. That's Chris Murphy, who's doing the mastering, and he sent me a couple of versions, and one was like the obligatory sort of major label treatment, and the other was kind of like more dynamic range. And so we went with the more dynamic one there. It's a little bit less compressed, and hopefully it sounds a bit more, you know, organic.
No, it definitely does. It's got a nice full sound to it as well, with, you know, with the song as well. But no, I really enjoy it, and it's just so cool. I just like that, you know, this is stuff you've recorded, you know, in the past, but now you're releasing it, and it's getting a release date, and for people to actually listen to it and experience it.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully it'll connect to people that sort of were fans of the old band, or maybe are never heard of that old band, but like that kind of music. It's kind of cool. One review locally just said something really cool, which I thought was kind of apropos. It was like, it sounds fresh, but it also sounds dated. It sounds new, but it also sounds familiar. So that's really kind of cool. I think you kind of nailed it.
I definitely agree with that. You know, obviously it's new because I'm listening to it the first time, but also it has that kind of more familiar sound to it with some of the aspects of it. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, maybe a bit of a 90s guitar feel. But yeah, man, that's the great thing about music, especially now, because we can reach so far with the tools we have. So, you know, like I'm talking to you in Indiana right now. This is great. You know, we can have our coffees together, separated by a couple 100 miles. It's great.
Exactly. Technology is so cool nowadays that, you know, you're able to, you know, do these things that this wasn't possible, you know, 15, 20 years ago, to be able to do things like this. And it's not, you know, that's just one aspect. Like, music has progressed so much in the last decade or so, that it's very cool, and it makes, you know, everything is very accessible. But with, you know, things being accessible, sometimes the quality control is not necessarily there for some people. But overall, I think technology has helped a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Like in the day when I was a little younger and first coming up, it was sort of like everybody in the scene would go see every band that had an LP. If you had a vinyl record, a full-length vinyl record, and you were on tour, everybody in that town that was into music would go see that band, regardless of whether they were like rockabilly or sludge or like hardcore punk rock or whatever it would be. You know, even, you know, we had a guy in our scene named Jerry. He had a band, Jerry and the Sons of Rhythm Orchestra. He was kind of like a punk rock version of a crooner, you know, like like Michael Bublé or something. It was like Michael Bublé with a punk rock backup band playing weird kind of cow punk bluesy. And you know, like now there would be a subgenre for that, and like 20 subgenres of it, and only the fans of that specific thing would go. But you know, hopefully as stuff blends again, people will stop worrying about whether it's, you know, death metal, Norwegian death metal, grind. You know, they'll just go see it because it's cool and heavy, you know.
No, I definitely know what you mean. I think you know, nowadays I don't think genres, you know, they're still a primary focus, but I don't think they're as emphasized as probably, you know, back in like, especially like in the 90s and, you know, and things like that, where you had to be in a certain genre to be able to get signed to a label, to be able to tour and all that kind of stuff. But nowadays I see like people are really, you know, mixing genres, or just, you know, like one song might sound like rock, but then you have like one where it's got like, you know, a completely different sound, or even pop sometimes. So I think it's really cool, and I do hope that does continue.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope more of the mixing on bills as well, live for live shows. Because it used to be that, you know, like when we were on tour with the Doughboys, we would play probably 3, 4, 5 times a week with, you know, somewhat generic sort of oompa beat hardcore bands, right? Not to slag those guys, because they were doing their thing too, but there's a lot of bands of that particular type. But then, you know, there'd be like, you know, one metal band, or there'd be us, or, you know, like, remember doing a show in DC with you know, Guar, us, Government Issue, and All, and I think there was probably one other opener. So pretty diverse, right? So hopefully, like, because now it's kind of like you go see a metal show and it's gonna be 3 metal bands. You go to see a punk rock show, it's gonna be 3 punk rock bands, and it's gonna be a specific type of punk rock, like usually, you know, like if they kind of have melodic singing, it's going to be only, you know. So hopefully we can sort of get back to just mixing it up, and like, who cares if it's metal or punk or neither, you know.
No, exactly. And I think I'm honestly, I'm definitely all for that, because, you know, it's cool. Like, you know, if you're a fan of this band, you like the opening band because they sound similar. Like, I get the marketing behind that, but from an enjoyable like standpoint, it's cool to discover new music. Doesn't really matter, you know, what it sounds like. If it's fun, if it sounds good, I'm all for it. I don't really care. Like, you know, if it's a death metal band and a punk rock band on the same bill, I don't really mind, as long as it's good music.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, music is kind of like the language of emotion, right? So as long as you're connecting to people, like, who cares what it sounds like, right? I mean,
Oh, exactly. And I understand the marketing behind similar bands touring, but for me, just as a fan, I'd rather just have some cool, diverse music instead of just the same almost sounding bands for the show.
yeah, absolutely. So what are you listening to? What's on your what's
so
on your turntable? Do you have a turntable? You listen to vinyl records?
Unfortunately I do not. I'm more
So
of
a Spotify guy, or
CDs actually.
oh, cool, sick.
Yeah.
So what are you listening to?
So currently I've been on like a huge, I'm not sure if you'll be familiar with this band. They're Coffin Cats out of Detroit. They're like a psychobilly band. I saw them.
Sounds cool though.
Yeah, I saw them earlier this month for the first time, and it was incredible. They have a stand-up bass instead of a bass guitar.
Oh wow!
And,
yeah, nice.
And he was swinging it around. He was playing it behind his head. It was incredible. Like, the ceiling was kind of short, so he hit the roof with the he hit the ceiling with his bass. So I was like, this is cool. I'm digging it. So I've been listening to them a lot. I've been listening to the new Iggy Pop music because I was seeing him in March.
Yeah. That's I've actually been listening to that record a bit too. Is that Coffin Cats with K or C? Coffin Cats.
But both K and Coffin, K and Cat.
Yeah, that sounds like I might have heard of them before. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, the new. What do you think of the new Iggy record?
I think I enjoy it. I think it's like he's like style wise, he's combining like the last album Free, because he's got some of that kind of vibe to it, and like the punk rock of Frenzy like sounds like it could be on a Skull Ring album.
Yeah, totally.
And so I think it's really cool. I think he's kind of, because a lot of his last couple albums were kind of just very similar like genre, like, you know, post pop depression, which was like more like garage rock, which is one of my favorite albums by him. But this one's kind of, he's got his punk rock elements in there. He's got his garage rock elements, and he's got like his free kind of whatever that album was genred as. Like he's got those kind of songs in there as well.
Yeah, he's definitely kind of, no matter what he does, it's going to have a certain sound to it, which is kind of awesome.
Oh, definitely. And I know he had a lot of good players in the for recording for this album. I know Chad Smith from the Red Hot Chili Peppers was the drummer for.
Was that right? Cool.
Yeah. Which it's just so cool. Like you wouldn't think, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Iggy Pop, even though like early Red Hot Chili Peppers, I could definitely see, but it's just so cool. Like the drummer for Red Hot Chili Peppers, is drumming for Iggy Pop on this album. I think it's just cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Another great example of what we were talking about. Of stuff just smushing together.
Definitely. So, what do you think of the new album?
I'm still kind of working my way through it. I like it a lot, and I liked it. It kind of covers some ground as well. Kind of like you were saying, you got Frenzy, and then what's the one with Loser in the title? Isn't the one with Loser in the title?
Is that? I think it's just Every Loser. I think.
Yeah.
Actually, let me see. I can pull it up right now. Yeah, it is. Where are we at?
Or maybe that's the Losers in the Line.
Well, yeah, the album is Every Loser.
No, there's another song I'm kind of thinking of. Oh, it's Strung Out Johnny.
Strung Out Johnny.
Strung Out Johnny, yeah. I think that's my favorite track from that record so far. It's just such classic Iggy, like the deep voice and the lyrics. And I love the way he says all fucked up. Like after the first or second chorus, Johnny's all fucked up. Oh, fucked up. It's just classic Iggy. So funny. Have you seen that Gimme Danger video? That Gimme Danger documentary about the Stooges and Iggy?
No, I haven't actually. Highly
recommend that. It's quite informative and also really, really funny because Iggy's just a super funny dude, man. There's this thing where he's talking about early on, because he originally was a drummer. Gimme Danger talks about that. He played drums originally, and so he had this idea in one of his early bands about how can we stand out? What are we going to do? And he decided they were going to make this enormous drum riser, and then they show a picture on the screen, and like when you say enormous, it's like 8 feet tall, made out of pipe, and there's the stage, and then Iggy sitting on a drum set like 8 feet. It's just, you got to see it, but it's like classic Iggy, like thinking left brain, like just out there. It's awesome. Gimme Danger, definitely recommend it.
I'm definitely gonna check that out. One of my favorite stories of like the Stooges, I saw this. It was on a placard at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, Ohio. So it was I believe one of the first Stooges show. It might have been like the first one, and they didn't sound very good to begin with. And Iggy Pop was wearing like golfing shoes, like cleats, and he was like stomping, like making holes in the stage. And for whatever reason, he shaved his eyebrows like before the show. So like he threw glitter in the air, and like it just went right into his eyes. So like his eyes are all red, and he's wearing these golfing cleats, and the band just didn't sound that good. And I forget, somebody was there to review the show, and they said, I don't know what to make of this.
I think that could be said of a lot of his career, right? Like
exactly. It just.
I had that same experience the first time I saw Off about, I don't know, maybe like 6 or 8 years. You know the band Off?
Keith Morris, right?
Yeah, so I saw them quite early on when they were touring with that 7-inch box set, and Stephen McDonald was still in the band, and Mario. And so I went their first time in not in Montreal. The first time in Vancouver was at the Fortune Sound Club. And it was a real mix of crowds. There was a lot of old punks from, like leather jackets and all, And then there was a bunch of younger punks that were kind of like, okay, well, we've heard about this band and this dude, but like I could tell from the responses that there was a whole lot of young kids that were just kind of like, this is really cool, but how do I respond to this? Like, okay, for me to dance, and if I dance, how do I dance? And like, and they're all looking around at each other and looking at the it's just great. And then like, of course, last time I saw Off, like last month, it was those young kids are all like, leading the charge, so super cool.
Oh, definitely. Off is really awesome too. I haven't listened to them in a while, but yeah, definitely very familiar with them, and they're really cool. I haven't seen them live yet, but I definitely do want to. But real quick with Iggy, like someone described that about anyone else, I'd be like, well, that seems a little off. But you described that about Iggy Pop of what happened. I'm like, you know what? I can see that. I can totally imagine that.
Just the golf cleats alone, right? Like, are they even called cleats in golf? Like,
I thought
I mean, it works. Like spikes, golf things. I don't know.
I'm not sure.
I kind of love that though. I feel like I want to get golf cleats now, just because of that. Like, how cool is that?
Exactly. Yeah, I've only played golf a few times, but like when I do, I'm usually awful.
It's all about just hitting them as far as you can. I think, right? I don't know. That's
straight.
Yeah. Well, straight. I mean, if you're good. I'm terrible, so I like hit one straight, 1 out of every 4 or 5. But
dude, my dad took me golfing for the first time, and it was at a city golf course here in South Bend. But like, there's a neighborhood. It's like in the middle of a neighborhood. So the first one I hit, it hooks like to the left. It goes over the fence they have and hits someone's house.
Oops.
Yep. My dad's like, just keep going. We're just gonna keep going.
Yeah. Carry on. That's awesome.
All right, so as we're going to be closing out this interview soon, I do got a couple of things we do want to talk about real quick. So you kind of touched on a little bit earlier about the new EP.
Yeah.
Is that Slip-Ons or is it?
Yeah, that's Slip-Ons. So that's my sort of main live band. There's still a couple of songs that I'll probably try to finish up from these same sessions and the sort of, in that solo situation, but some of those are like needing a bit more sort of work to just get finished up. So that's sort of something ongoing. And then the Slip-Ons EP is a 5-song, going to be on 12-inch. So we've got all 5 songs mixed. They were done by Dave Ogilvy, who's maybe you know him from like mixing Skinny Puppy or being in Skinny Puppy. Actually, he mixed the first big Doughboys record, the one that was on A&M, and he's kind of a local heavyweight around here, so he's done those mixes. So really just got to approve those now and send them off to mastering, and then that'll go to get pressed, and we're looking at sometime, depending on how fast they can turn around the vinyl, maybe sometime in July. So that'll be that's probably going to be called Heavy Machinery, and Slip-Ons will be the artist.
All right. Are there plans? Like, what are are there plans to tour for Slip-Ons with the EP?
Yeah, I think it'll be pretty regional right now until we can afford to go a little farther. It's kind of easier for American bands to come here than it is for us to go there right now, just because of the amount of money to get P2 visas and stuff. But yeah, we're gonna do some shows. We're playing with John Snodgrass and Dead Bars next week. Dead Bars is a Seattle band. You should probably check them out. They're kind of cool. John Snodgrass used to be in Drag the River and Armchair Martian. And he's got some Minneapolis guys in his band. So we'll be playing with them and hopefully try to do a couple more regional shows, heading out to Toronto and so forth. Depends on the response, obviously, right?
Definitely. But yeah, your visas are a really big issue now. I have even just for like anyone trying to come in the U.S., it's like the paperwork's it's a lot of paperwork, and I've heard it's super expensive to try to get visas now. Yeah.
Some of John Snodgrass's band, they're from Minneapolis, and one of the drummers is an old friend of mine, and he said, well, if you do want to do some live shows for the Brock Pytel solo stuff, come here. Well, they like to sort of base their little touring activities around baseball games because they're huge baseball nerds, and then we're like, okay, well, let's go to Coors Field, and then we'll book some shows in Denver, and so we're talking about maybe doing something like that in the summer as well. Go see some Twins games and play a couple of Minneapolis shows and see where that goes.
Oh, right on. I do hope all that works out. It sounds like you got some great stuff in the works, not only for your solo work but also Slip-Ons as well. I definitely look forward to seeing how the rest of the year progressed for you. It's only beginning of 2023, so a lot left for this year.
Absolutely, Matt. Thanks so much for having me on too, man.
Of course. Had a great time chatting with you. I'll leave some links in the description for your music and a few other things as well. But make sure to check out the description of this podcast. Brock, thank you so much for hopping on Super Cool Radio.
Thanks, man. Carry on. Good work.
Of course, for Brock Pytel, I am your host as always, Matthew Thomas. Thank you so much for listening, watching, or listening to Super Cool Radio. And remember, stay frosty.